Marcus Hale knew his duty, but never expected to fall. Not here. Not like this. As the blast pierced his chest, time itself seemed to slow. Across from him, Princess Alara's iridescent eyes widened in horror, her alabaster features frozen in a silent scream that would echo through the crystalline halls of Aruvian's floating palace. The year was 2475, and humanity had long since established itself among the stars. The Planetary Alliance and the Alien Federation existed in a tenuous peace after more than a decade of interplanetary civil war. Marcus served as Royal Guard Captain, assigned to protect Princess Alara of Aruvian, a crystalline world of floating cities and ancient technologies. The diplomatic ceremony should have been routine. Representatives from 7 planetary systems gathered in the Grand Crystal Hall of Aruvian's capital, their faces illuminated by the soft blue glow emanating from the ceiling's bioluminescent patterns. Alara stood before them, her silver blue skin catching the light as she raised her arms in the traditional Aruvian greeting. "On behalf of the Federation, I welcome you all to—" The distinctive whine of a particle weapon charging cut through her words. Marcus registered the sound before anyone else, his human instincts, honed through years of combat, already propelling him forward as the first shot blasted through the chamber's protective energy field. He didn't think, he simply moved. The assassin's beam struck him squarely in the back as he threw himself between the princess and death. Pain exploded through his body, but he felt oddly calm. His final act as a guard would be his most important. "Marcus!" Alara caught him as he fell, her cool hands cradling his face. The room erupted into chaos, but all he could see was her face, framed by tendrils of what humans might call hair, but were actually sensitive neural filaments that glowed with increasing intensity as her distress mounted. "White Inferno," he managed to whisper, naming the terrorist organization that had plagued peace efforts for years. "They'll try again." "Don't speak. The healers are coming." Tears, luminescent and silver, slid down her alien features. Marcus smiled faintly. Strange. How in that moment he noticed everything about her with perfect clarity. The geometric patterns etched into her skin. The way her eyes shifted between violet and indigo depending on the light. The gentle pulse at her throat that beat in a rhythm so different from human hearts. "It was an honor to serve," he whispered, tasting copper. Around them, Aruvian guards flooded the chamber, energy shields deployed, but Marcus knew he wouldn't live to see the assassin captured. Darkness crept into the edges of his vision, and with his final breath, he reached up to touch Alara's face. "Live," he said simply. Then Marcus Hale, human guard to an alien princess, closed his eyes for what should have been the final time. The immediate aftermath passed in a blur for Alara. The Royal Guard subdued the assassin, a member of the White Inferno who had infiltrated the serving staff. The diplomatic guests were ushered to safety, while Marcus's body was respectfully covered and taken away. Through it all, Alara remained unnaturally still, silver blood staining her ceremonial robes where she had held him. When her father, the High Sovereign, came to her side, she didn't acknowledge his presence. "Daughter," he said softly, his voice resonating at frequencies that carried both sound and emotion. "You must address the people. They need to see you unharmed." "I am not unharmed," she replied, her voice hollow. "Marcus is dead because of me." "He fulfilled his purpose," the Sovereign said, not unkindly. "Humans are resilient but fragile. You knew this when you requested a human guard." Alara finally looked up, her eyes pulsing with an intensity that made even the Sovereign step back. "He was more than his purpose," she said, "and I will not speak to the people until proper respect has been shown to his sacrifice." Later that night, alone in her chambers, Alara stood on her balcony overlooking the crystal city of Aruvian. Below, the buildings spiraled and curved in geometric impossibilities, suspended in air by technologies so old that they had become indistinguishable from magic to most citizens. She held Marcus's service medallion in her palm. It was still warm, as though some essence of him remained within the metal. Humans were so contradictory, physically weaker than Aruvians in many ways, yet possessing a fire within them that her people often lacked. Marcus had been the epitome of this contradiction, disciplined yet spontaneous, formal yet warm. A soft chime announced a visitor, and Alara closed her fingers around the medallion before turning. "Enter," she commanded. The door dissolved to reveal Erix, her father's chief science advisor, tall even for an Aruvian, with skin patterned in complex mathematical formulas that shifted and calculated continuously. Erix was known for his brilliance and his unconventional thinking. "Your Highness," he bowed slightly. "I came to offer my condolences. Captain Hale was unique among humans." "He was unique among all beings," Alara corrected, then sighed. "But I appreciate your sentiment. Professor Erix, was there something else?" Erix hesitated, his patterns pulsing with rapid calculations. "Perhaps this is not the time, but I know you and Captain Hale shared a particular interest in ancient technologies." Despite her grief, Alara felt a spark of curiosity. "Go on." "In my research, I've encountered references to a device, older than our recorded history, that could potentially restore life." Alara stared at him. "Resurrection technology? That's forbidden knowledge. The ancient curse is a religious interpretation of historical events." Erix finished. "I prefer to see it as a technological safeguard against misuse." He stepped forward, lowering his voice. "But the technology itself existed, and may still exist." Hope, dangerous and desperate, flickered in Alara's heart. "Where?" "The abandoned temples on Varun. I've decoded coordinates from fragments of pre-civilization texts." Erix's patterns shifted anxiously. "But Your Highness, even possessing this information violates the Sovereign's decree." Alara opened her hand, looking down at Marcus's medallion. "My father believes all ancient technology should remain buried. But what if our ancestors meant for these tools to be used when truly needed?" "Your Highness!" "You've done your duty by informing me, Professor," Alara said, her royal tone returning. "I'll consider this information carefully." Erix bowed again and departed, the door reforming behind him, alone once more. Alara clutched the medallion tightly and made a decision that would change everything. "I won't let you remain in darkness, Marcus," she whispered to the night. "Whatever the cost." The next morning, Alara attended the formal memorial service for Marcus. Human diplomatic representatives stood alongside Aruvian officials in the Temple of Eternal Light, where a holographic flame burned in honor of the fallen guard. Julian, the temple's head priest, conducted the ceremony with solemn dignity, tall and imposing in flowing silver robes that complemented his pale blue skin. Julian represented the conservative religious faction that had gained influence during the war years. "We commit the essence of Marcus Hale, son of Earth, guardian of Aruvian, to the cosmic flow," Julian intoned, his deep voice echoing through the domed chamber. Though his physical form returns to stardust, his actions have created ripples in the universe that shall never fade. Alara watched the ceremonial flame flicker and dance, casting moving shadows across the assembled mourners. Among them, she noticed a human woman with captain's insignia, Commander Lyra Vega of Earth's Diplomatic Corps, who had worked with Marcus before his assignment to Aruvian. After the service, Commander Vega approached Alara with a formal bow. "Your Highness, Captain Hale spoke highly of you in his communications home," she said, her voice steady, though her eyes betrayed deeper emotions. "He believed in the alliance between our peoples." "As do I, Commander," Alara replied. "Your presence honors his memory." Commander Vega hesitated, then added more softly, "He mentioned that you showed interest in Earth's history and customs. That was unusual. Most Aruvians view us as useful but primitive." "Marcus taught me that different doesn't mean lesser," Alara said, feeling the weight of his medallion hidden in her ceremonial robes. "I valued his perspective greatly." "Then perhaps you'll consider continuing what he started," Commander Vega suggested. "The cultural exchange program needs advocates on both sides." "I will consider it," Alara promised, though her thoughts were already focused on a different kind of exchange, between life and death. As the mourners dispersed, Priest Julian approached Alara, his ceremonial staff clicking against the crystal floor. "Your Highness," he bowed deeply, "your presence brought comfort to many today, especially our human allies. Thank you for conducting the service with such respect." "Priest Julian," Alara responded formally. Julian's expression softened slightly. "I sensed great distress in your aura during the ceremony. The burden of witnessing death so directly can weigh heavily on one's spirit." For a moment, Alara considered confiding in him about Erix's information. Julian was conservative but compassionate, and despite their differences in perspective, she valued his wisdom. But the priest's next words changed her mind. "Remember that death is the natural conclusion to life's journey," he continued. "The ancients warn us that disrupting this flow brings only suffering. Your human guard fulfilled his purpose nobly. We honor him best by accepting the cosmic order." "Of course, Priest Julian," Alara said carefully. "If you'll excuse me, I must attend to state matters." That night, Alara summoned both Professor Erix and her personal guard captain, Tavik, to her private study. The room, lined with both physical books and holographic data spheres, had been her sanctuary since childhood, and the place where she and Marcus had spent many hours discussing the differences between their cultures. Tavik arrived first, his military posture perfect as always. A decorated veteran of the Civil War, he had served as Marcus's second-in-command and had taken the human's death personally, seeing it as a security failure. "Your Highness," he saluted formally. "Captain Tavik," Alara nodded. "I trust the palace security review is progressing." "Yes, Your Highness. We've identified the vulnerability the assassin exploited and implemented countermeasures." His voice tightened. "It won't happen again." "I know it won't," she said gently, knowing Tavik had respected Marcus despite their cultural differences. When Erix arrived moments later, Alara activated the room's privacy field, causing the crystal walls to cloud and block both visual and auditory surveillance. "What I'm about to discuss cannot leave this room," she began without preamble. "Professor Erix has located coordinates to an ancient temple on Varun that may contain resurrection technology." Tavik's eyes widened. "Your Highness, such technology is forbidden by royal decree. Your father is not to know of this." Alara finished firmly. "Captain Hale gave his life for me. If there's any chance to restore him, I must try." "Even if such technology exists," Tavik argued, "the abandoned planet Varen is dangerous. Electrical sandstorms, unstable ground, not to mention potential raiders who hide in the ruins." "Which is why I need your help," Alara said. "I need a small team I can trust absolutely. No official record, no royal transport." Erix's patterns pulsed with agitation. "You intend to go yourself? Your Highness, the risk—" "Is mine to take," she interrupted. "I've made my decision. The question is whether you will help me, or if I need to find others who will." A heavy silence fell over the room. Finally, Tavik sighed, his military discipline warring with personal loyalty. "Captain Hale would never forgive me if I let you undertake such a mission without protection," he said reluctantly. "I'll arrange a secure transport and a small team of my most trusted guards." Alara nodded gratefully, then turned to Erix. "Professor, Your knowledge of the ancient texts will be essential. Eric's patterns swirled in complex equations as he calculated risks and possibilities. I've dedicated my life to understanding our ancestors' technologies, he said finally. I cannot pass up this opportunity, despite the dangers. But, Your Highness, we should consult with someone who understands the religious implications as well. Priest Julian would never approve, Alara said, shaking her head. Perhaps, Eric's acknowledged, but his knowledge of the ancient texts rivals my own, albeit from a different perspective. And if we succeed, the spiritual consequences may be as significant as the scientific ones. Alara considered this. You're right, but approaching him requires caution. Leave that to me, Eric's offered. We've debated cosmology for decades. I know how to appeal to his scholarly curiosity. As they finalized their plans, Alara felt a mixture of hope and trepidation. She was about to violate her father's direct decree, potentially destabilize the religious foundation of her people, and place herself in physical danger, all for a human guard who had already fulfilled his duty by dying for her. Yet when she thought of Marcus's final moments, his selflessness, his simple command for her to live, she knew she couldn't choose differently. Some connections transcended duty, transcended even the boundaries between species. 3 days, she decided. We depart in 3 days. The ancient temple on Varun was located on the far side of the galaxy, deep within what had once been contested territory during the Civil War. Now, largely abandoned, except for scattered outposts and the occasional research team. Varun was a planet of extreme conditions, scorching days, freezing nights, and unpredictable electrical storms that could fry unshielded technology in seconds. Convincing Priest Julian to join their expedition had been easier than expected. Professor Erix had approached him with carefully selected fragments of ancient texts that hinted at the temple's existence without revealing their true purpose. Julian's scholarly interest had been piqued, and when Alara formally requested his expertise for what she called a cultural heritage assessment, he had agreed, albeit with some reservation. Your Highness, while I'm honored by your request, I must ask why the royal heir would interest herself in such remote ruins when diplomatic matters require attention here. Julian had questioned. The recent assassination attempt has highlighted the fragility of our peace. Alara had answered smoothly. Understanding our shared ancient history may provide insights into creating more lasting harmony. Now, as their unmarked transport ship approached Varun's turbulent atmosphere, Alara wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. The small vessel shuddered violently as it descended through thick cloud layers, charged with electrical energy. Shields at maximum, reported Mira, their pilot, and one of Tavik's most trusted officers. We're detecting a severe electrical storm ahead. Standard approach is impossible. Can you navigate around it? Tavik asked, his face illuminated by the red warning lights flashing across the control panel. Mira's fingers danced across the holographic controls. Attempting alternate trajectory. Everyone, secure yourselves. This will be rough. Alara gripped her seat as the ship banked sharply, narrowly avoiding a massive lightning bolt that illuminated the cockpit with blinding intensity. Beside her, Priest Julian murmured a traditional prayer, his knuckles white against his ceremonial staff. Your Highness, he said quietly, I cannot help but feel we are tempting cosmic forces by coming here. Varen was abandoned for good reason. All knowledge carries risk. Priest Julian, she replied. Isn't that what you teach in your sermons? That understanding requires courage? Before he could respond, the ship lurched violently, throwing them against their restraints. Direct hit, Mira called out. Secondary systems failing. Attempting emergency landing procedures. Through the viewport, Alara caught glimpses of Varun's surface, vast red deserts punctuated by jagged crystal formations that reached toward the sky like accusing fingers. The ship spiraled downward, fighting against both gravity and electromagnetic interference. "Impact in 30 seconds," Mira announced, her voice professionally calm despite the circumstances. "Brace for landing." The crash was both more violent and less fatal than Alara had feared. Mira's skill had brought them down on a relatively flat stretch of desert, though the ship's landing gear had collapsed on impact, causing the vessel to skid for nearly half a kilometer before coming to rest against a small crystal formation. Inside, emergency lighting bathed the cabin in dim blue light as systems attempted to restart. Alara unstrapped herself and immediately began checking on her companions. "Status report," she commanded. "Minor injuries only, Your Highness," Tavik responded, already moving through the cabin to assess his team. The ship, however, is another matter. Professor Eriks, who had been silent during much of the descent, finally spoke, his pattern-covered fingers working rapidly over a portable data tablet. "The good news is that we're only about 20 kilometers from the temple coordinates. The bad news is that our communications array is completely destroyed." "Can we repair the ship?" Alara asked Mira, who was running diagnostics on the control systems. The pilot shook her head grimly. "Main propulsion is offline. The electrical storm fried our primary circuits. We can maintain life support and basic functions, but we won't be flying out of here." Priest Julian, who had been examining a small cut on his forehead, looked up sharply. "So we're stranded on a planet known for killing its visitors, with no way to call for help, in pursuit of ruins that may not even exist?" "Not stranded," Tavik corrected. "We still have the ground transport module, and we brought supplies for 2 weeks. The standard patrol schedules would have someone checking this sector within 10 days if we don't return." 10 days in these conditions," Julian muttered. "We continue as planned," Alara decided. "Prepare the ground transport. We'll reach the temple, complete our mission, and then return here to wait for rescue if necessary." As the others began gathering equipment, Professor Eriks approached Alara privately. "Your Highness," he said quietly, "I feel I should warn you. The ancient texts were not entirely clear about the nature of the resurrection technology. There may be conditions or limitations we don't yet understand." Alara nodded solemnly. "I'm prepared for that possibility, Professor, but I need to know for certain, one way or another. And if what we find cannot help Captain Hale." She looked away, toward the viewport where Varen's harsh landscape stretched to the horizon, beautiful and deadly in the light of the setting sun. "Then at least I will know I tried everything possible." The ground transport, a 6-wheeled vehicle designed for rough terrain, departed from the crash site as Varun's sun dipped below the horizon. Mira remained with the ship, working to restore basic communications, while the rest of the expedition continued toward the temple coordinates. Darkness brought new challenges. The temperature dropped rapidly, forcing them to activate the vehicle's thermal shields. Strange, phosphorescent creatures emerged from beneath the sand, their elongated bodies creating weaving patterns of light across the desert floor. "Luminous sandworms," Professor Eriks noted with scientific interest. "They surface only at night when the electrical charge in the atmosphere is at its lowest." "Are they dangerous?" asked one of Tavik's guards, his hand instinctively moving to his weapon. "Only if you disturb their feeding patterns," Eriks replied. "They're actually quite beneficial. They consume the charged particles in the sand that make this planet so hazardous to technology." Alara watched the ghostly dance of the creatures, reminded of how little they truly knew about the universe despite all their advanced technology. How many other wonders, or dangers, awaited them at the temple? They traveled through the night, taking turns at the controls while others rested. Alara found sleep impossible, her mind filled with images of Marcus's final moments and questions about what they might find. Would the technology truly be capable of bringing him back? And if so, at what cost? Dawn broke suddenly on Varun, the horizon erupting into brilliant crimson and gold as the planet's sun rose with startling speed. The temperature in the transport rose accordingly, even with cooling systems at maximum. "We're approaching the coordinates," Tavik announced, studying the navigation display. "But I'm not seeing any structures." Professor Eriks leaned forward eagerly. The temples were often built underground to escape the surface conditions. Look for geometric anomalies in the landscape, perfectly straight lines or exact angles that wouldn't occur naturally. They continued more slowly now, all eyes scanning the increasingly rocky terrain. The red desert had given way to a valley filled with crystal formations of varying sizes, some as small as a fist, others towering like skyscrapers. "There," Priest Julian suddenly pointed. "That formation to the northwest. The crystals are arranged in a perfect octagon." Tavik adjusted their course, bringing them closer to the formation Julian had identified. As they approached, more unnatural patterns became apparent, crystals aligned with mathematical precision, creating what appeared to be a massive, geometric garden, frozen in crystalline perfection. "It's beautiful," Alara breathed. "And dangerous," Tavik cautioned, indicating the readings on his scanner. "The crystal concentration here is amplifying the planet's electromagnetic field. Our equipment will be useless if we go much closer." Professor Eriks nodded thoughtfully. "As expected. The ancients used natural phenomena as security systems. We'll need to proceed on foot from here, using only mechanical tools and basic light sources." They parked the transport at a safe distance and prepared their expedition gear. Tavik insisted that Alara wear protective armor, despite her objections, that it would slow her down. "Captain Hale would never forgive me if anything happened to you," he said firmly, helping her adjust the lightweight plates. "Especially since we're here because of him." The group set out toward the Crystal Garden, each carrying minimal equipment. The heat was intense, despite their protective clothing, and the crystal formations created disorienting reflections that made it difficult to maintain a straight path. As they ventured deeper into the geometric patterns, Priest Julian became increasingly agitated, stopping frequently to examine specific crystals or configurations. "These are not merely decorative," he explained when Alara questioned him. "They're a language, a three-dimensional text describing—" "I believe it's a warning." "What kind of warning?" Tavik asked sharply. Julian traced the facets of a particularly complex crystal formation. "It speaks of balance, of cosmic equilibrium. What is given must be taken. What is taken must be given. It's a fundamental principle in our oldest religious texts." "Conservation of energy and matter," Professor Eriks translated into scientific terms. "Basic physics, dressed in mystical language." "Not just energy and matter," Julian corrected. "Life force itself. The ancients believed that consciousness was a finite resource in the universe, carefully balanced across all living beings." Alara felt a chill despite the heat. "And the resurrection technology? How does that fit with this belief?" Julian and Eriks exchanged troubled glances. "It would have to transfer life force," Eriks said slowly. "Not created anew." The implications hung heavily in the air as they continued toward the center of the Crystal Garden. The formations grew denser, the patterns more complex, until they arrived at what appeared to be a solid wall of red crystal, at least 20 meters high, and stretching in both directions as far as they could see. "This can't be natural," one of the guards commented. "It isn't," Professor Eriks confirmed, approaching the wall with reverent steps. "This is the temple entrance." Alara moved forward, placing her hand against the smooth crystal surface. It felt cool despite the desert heat, and she could sense a faint vibration beneath her fingertips. "How do we get inside?" Eriks consulted his notes, now recorded on physical paper rather than electronic devices. "According to the fragments I translated, there should be a resonance point, a specific location that, when activated with the correct frequency, will create an opening." "What frequency?" Tavik asked. That's less clear, Eric's admitted. The texts mentioned the Song of Homecoming, but that could be interpreted many ways. Priest Julian stepped forward, his expression thoughtful. In the ancient ceremonial chants, there is a sequence used to welcome spirits back to the physical realm during the renewal festival. Could that be relevant? It's worth trying, Alara encouraged. Julian nodded and began to chant in the old Aruvian language, his deep voice producing harmonic overtones that seemed to hang in the air. The crystal wall remained unchanged for several long moments. But as Julian continued, subtle vibrations began to ripple across its surface. It's working, Eric's whispered. Keep going. The priest's voice grew stronger, the ancient words flowing with practiced precision. Gradually, the vibrations intensified until the entire wall seemed to shimmer like a heat mirage. Then, without warning, a section of crystal dissolved inward, revealing a dark passage beyond. Remarkable, Tavik breathed, instinctively positioning himself in front of Alara as cool air flowed out from the opening. Alara felt her heart race with both excitement and apprehension. They had found the temple, but what waited for them inside? And would it truly offer a way to bring Marcus back from death's embrace? Activate light sources, she commanded, stepping toward the entrance. We proceed with caution. The temple interior was a marvel of ancient engineering. Smooth crystal corridors extended in multiple directions, illuminated by bioluminescent patterns, similar to those in Aruvian's modern architecture, but far more intricate. The air was cool and surprisingly fresh, circulated by some unseen mechanism that had functioned flawlessly for millennia. The similarities to our current building methods are undeniable, Professor Eriks observed, his scientific curiosity momentarily overshadowing the gravity of their mission. Our ancestors clearly possessed technology that we've only partially rediscovered. Or perhaps modern Aruvian designers were inspired by visits to places like this, Tavik suggested, his trained eyes constantly scanning for potential threats. Priest Julian ran his fingers along the wall inscriptions with reverent care. These are the original forms of our sacred texts, not copies or interpretations, but the source material itself. His voice held wonder tinged with concern. We are walking through living history. Alara appreciated their observations, but remained focused on their purpose. Which way leads to the resurrection technology? Arix consulted his notes again. The texts describe a central chamber accessed through trials of increasing difficulty. The first is called the Path of Memory. As if triggered by his words, the corridor ahead suddenly illuminated more brightly, while the other passages dimmed. I believe we're being invited to proceed, Eric said, pointing toward the brightened path. They followed the illuminated corridor, which gradually sloped downward and curved in a perfect spiral. The walls displayed increasingly complex patterns that seemed to shift subtly as they passed, creating an almost hypnotic effect. Stay alert, Tavik warned his team. These visual effects could be designed to disorient intruders. After descending for what seemed like hours, but was likely only minutes in the disorienting environment, they reached a circular chamber with 7 identical doorways arranged around its perimeter. In the center stood a crystalline pedestal, emitting a soft blue glow. The Path of Memory, Eriks confirmed. According to the texts, we must choose the correct door by remembering our true purpose. And if we choose incorrectly? One of the guards asked nervously. The texts don't specify, Eriks admitted. But considering the security measures we've already encountered, I wouldn't recommend experimentation. Alara approached the central pedestal cautiously. As she drew near, the blue glow intensified, and a shimmering holographic display appeared above it, far more advanced than she had expected from ancient technology. The hologram showed swirling patterns of light that gradually coalesced into recognizable shapes. A human figure lying still, surrounded by mourners. A journey across star systems. A brilliant light being transferred from one form to another. It's showing us fragments of resurrection narratives from various cultures, Priest Julian whispered, fascinated despite his reservations. The images continued to shift and change until they suddenly froze on a single scene. A crystal, similar to the one on the pedestal, but larger, glowing with intense blue light as it hovered between two figures, one standing, one prone. I believe it's asking why we seek this technology, Eric suggested. Alara stepped forward without hesitation. I seek to restore life to one who sacrificed himself for me. Marcus Hale, human guard and friend to Aruvian. The hologram pulsed once, then transformed again, showing 7 different scenarios, one corresponding to each door. In one, a ruler commanded armies of resurrected soldiers. In another, a scientist created multiple copies of a single being. Each scene depicted a different use of resurrection technology, most of them disturbing in their implications. These are warnings, Julian realized, showing us how this power has been misused. Or could be misused, Eric's corrected. We must choose the door that represents our true intention. Alara studied each scenario carefully, then pointed to the third door, where the hologram showed a simple scene. One person, freely giving light to restore another, with no armies, no duplicates, no suggestion of power or control. That one, she said with certainty. A life freely given, freely returned. The moment she spoke, the blue light from the pedestal extended to illuminate the third door, while the hologram faded away. The door slid open silently, revealing another corridor beyond. Well done, Your Highness, Tavik said with newfound respect. Indeed, Priest Julian agreed, though his expression remained troubled. Though I must point out that freely given, freely returned suggests an exchange, not creation. This reinforces my concern about the nature of this technology. Let's proceed, Alara said, unwilling to be deterred now that they had come so far. Whatever conditions exist, I need to understand them fully before making any decisions. The next corridor was shorter, but more challenging. The crystal floor became transparent, revealing what appeared to be a bottomless chasm below, while the walls pulsed with energy that set their skin tingling. The path of courage, Eric's identified from his research. We must proceed without fear to reach the next chamber. Easy for the person who isn't afraid of heights to say, muttered one of the guards, visibly uncomfortable with the transparent floor. Focus on the door ahead, Tavik advised. Not on what's below. They moved forward carefully, the crystal floor solid beneath their feet despite its transparent appearance. As they progressed, the energy pulses from the walls intensified, creating painful sensations that tested their resolve. It's reading our biological responses, Eric's explained through gritted teeth, measuring our determination against our fear. Alara felt the energy probing her mind, seeking doubt or hesitation. Images of failure flashed before her, finding Marcus only to lose him again, returning to Aruvian in disgrace, facing her father's disappointment and her people's judgment. Keep moving, she commanded, as much to herself as to the others. Whatever you're experiencing isn't real. Finally, they reached the end of the corridor, where another door opened automatically to admit them. Beyond lay a chamber, much larger than the first, dominated by a central platform, surrounded by concentric rings of crystal pillars that pulsed with blue energy. The Chamber of Restoration, Eric's breathed, his patterns shifting rapidly with excitement. We've found it. Alara approached the central platform slowly, taking in every detail. At its center stood a crystal formation unlike any she had seen before. A complex, multifaceted structure that seemed to contain its own galaxy of tiny lights swirling within. The Restoration Crystal, Julian identified, his religious knowledge aligning with Eric's scientific research. Said to contain the essence of life itself. Eric's moved to a control panel near the platform, its surface covered in ancient symbols. "These appear to be operational instructions," he said, fingers hovering over the symbols as he translated. "It describes a process of transfer." "Transfer of what?" Tavik asked, positioning his guards around the chamber's perimeter. Arix and Yulian exchanged glances before Eric's answered. "Life essence. The technology doesn't create life from nothing. It requires a donor." A heavy silence fell over the group as the implications became clear. "A life for a life," Alara said quietly. "The balance priest Yulian mentioned." "Not necessarily a complete life," Eric's clarified, still studying the controls. "The transfer can be partial, drawing small amounts of life essence from multiple donors to restore one individual. But there's a primary connector, someone whose life force serves as the template, I suppose you could say." "That would be me," Alara decided immediately. "I'm the one who brought us here. I'll be the primary donor." "Your Highness, I cannot allow that," Tavik protested. "The risk." "Is mine to take?" she interrupted firmly. "Professor, how do we proceed?" Before Erix could answer, a low rumbling shook the chamber, sending cascades of crystal dust from the ceiling. "What was that?" one of the guards asked nervously. "Seismic activity," Erix said, checking a mechanical measuring device from his pack. "This planet has always been geologically unstable, but—" Another, stronger tremor cut him off, and this time the shaking continued for several seconds. "The temple's structural integrity is compromised," Tavik announced, his military training taking over. "We need to evacuate immediately." "Not yet," Alara insisted. "Professor Erix, quickly, what do we need to do?" Erix worked rapidly at the control panel. "We need genetic material from Captain Hale to serve as a focal point for the restoration. Do you have anything?" Alara reached into her pocket and withdrew Marcus's medallion. "His blood is on this. Will it be enough?" "It should be," Erix confirmed, taking the medallion and placing it in a receptacle near the crystal. "Now, we need the primary donor, you, to connect with the restoration crystal while I activate the sequence." Another, more violent tremor shook the chamber. One of the outer crystal pillars cracked and toppled, narrowly missing two of Tavik's guards. "Your Highness, please," Tavik pleaded. "We must leave now." "Start the evacuation," Alara commanded. "Get everyone out. I'll follow as soon as this is complete." "I'm staying with you," Tavik said firmly. "As am I," added Priest Yulian, surprising everyone. "This process may have spiritual implications that require guidance." "And I'm needed to operate the controls," Erix concluded. Alara nodded gratefully. "The rest of you, go. That's an order. Report our situation and location to Mira." The guards departed reluctantly, leaving the four of them in the increasingly unstable chamber. "What now?" Alara asked, turning back to Erix. "Place your hands on the crystal," he instructed, fingers dancing over the ancient controls. "Focus on your memories of Captain Hale, who he was, what made him unique." Alara approached the crystal and placed her palms against its cool surface. Immediately, a tingling sensation spread up her arms and into her chest. Not painful, but intensely present. "The crystal is establishing a connection to your life essence," Erix explained, monitoring the controls. "It's working." Alara closed her eyes, filling her mind with memories of Marcus, his rare smile when protocol allowed it, his patience in explaining human customs, his unwavering loyalty, and finally, his sacrifice. The crystal grew warmer beneath her hands, the lights within swirling faster. "Remarkable," Priest Yulian murmured, watching the energy patterns within the crystal align with Alara's neural frequencies. The ancients truly understood the connection between consciousness and matter. Another violent tremor shook the chamber, larger than before. Cracks spread across the ceiling, and more pillars began to fall. "We need to hurry," Tavik warned, bracing himself against the platform. Almost there, Eric's called over the rumbling. The system is calculating the exact requirements for restoration. Suddenly, the crystal flared with blinding intensity, and Alara felt a sharp pain in her chest, as though something was being torn from her very being. She gasped, but maintained her connection to the crystal. "Your Highness!" Tavik moved toward her, concerned. "I'm all right," she managed, though the pain continued to pulse through her. "What's happening?" Eric's expression grew grave as he read the symbols appearing on the control panel. The system has determined that Captain Hale's injuries were too severe. A partial transfer won't be sufficient. "Meaning what?" Alara demanded. "Meaning the crystal requires a complete life essence transfer from the primary donor," Eric's explained reluctantly. "Your entire life force, Your Highness." Tavik immediately moved to pull Alara away from the crystal. "That's not happening. We're leaving now." "Wait," she commanded, her voice strained but royal authority still evident. "There must be another option." "There isn't," Julian said solemnly. "This is why the ancient texts warn against resurrection. The cosmic balance must be maintained. A life for a life." The chamber shook continuously now, chunks of crystal falling around them. The beautiful architecture that had stood for millennia was coming apart at its foundations. "We have perhaps minutes before total collapse," Eric's warned. Alara felt tears forming in her eyes, not from the pain, but from the crushing weight of impossibility. She had come so far, risked so much, only to face an impossible choice, her life or Marcus's. "I can't just leave him," she whispered. "He wouldn't want you to die for him," Tavik said gently. "He gave his life so you could live. Your Highness, don't make his sacrifice meaningless." As the words left Tavik's mouth, the swirling lights within the crystal suddenly changed pattern, forming a recognizable shape, a human face, Marcus's face. "Impossible," Eric's breathed, "unless—" His consciousness, Julian realized. Some trace of it must have been preserved in his blood on the medallion. The face in the crystal seemed to look directly at Alara, its expression one of determination and choice. "He's making a decision," Alara understood suddenly. "He's offering—" Before she could complete the thought, the crystal pulsed with new energy, and symbols flashed rapidly across the control panel. "It's reconfiguring," Eric's announced, astonished. "The system is accepting Captain Hale's consciousness as the primary template, using his own life essence as the foundation." "But how?" Tavik asked. "He's dead." "Not entirely. It seems," Julian mused. "In our traditions, we speak of the echo that remains after death, the imprint of consciousness that lingers before rejoining the cosmic flow. The crystal has captured that echo and is amplifying it." Another devastating tremor rocked the chamber, sending a massive crack through the floor directly toward the platform. "Whatever's happening, it needs to happen now," Tavik urged. The crystal glowed with increasing intensity until it was painful to look at directly. Alara felt the connection between herself and the crystal strengthen, but instead of draining her life force, it seemed to be using her as a conduit, a bridge between Marcus's lingering consciousness and the physical world. "It's working," Eric's confirmed, his voice filled with scientific wonder. "But the temple is failing. We need to get the crystal to a stable location to complete the process." "Can we move it?" Alara asked urgently. "Theoretically, yes. The process has progressed far enough that the crystal is now self-sustaining, but—" A massive section of ceiling collapsed directly behind them, crushing the control panel and narrowly missing Eric's himself. "No more theory," Tavik decided, drawing his weapon and using its energy beam to carefully cut around the base of the crystal. "We're taking it now." Working quickly, they freed the crystal from its mounting while maintaining its connections to Marcus's medallion. The glowing artifact, now about the size of a human head, pulsed with steady blue light. "We need to move," Tavik ordered, carefully lifting the crystal and wrapping it in protective material from his pack. Stay close together. They navigated through the collapsing temple, dodging falling debris and leaping over widening cracks in the floor. The beautiful corridors they had admired earlier were now death traps, crystal shards raining down like deadly daggers. "The exit is just ahead," Eric's called out, pointing to a faint light in the distance. As they ran toward it, a final, catastrophic tremor shook the entire structure. The ceiling directly above their path gave way completely, tons of crystal plummeting toward them. "Look out!" Tavik shouted, pushing Alara forward while cradling the precious crystal. Alara stumbled through the exit into blinding daylight, Eric's and Yulian right behind her. She turned back just in time to see Tavik, still holding the crystal, disappear under an avalanche of crystal debris. "Tavik!" she screamed, lunging back toward the entrance. Eric's and Yulian grabbed her arms, restraining her. "It's too late," Eric said grimly. "The entire structure is coming down." They retreated to a safe distance, watching in horror as the magnificent temple collapsed in on itself, sending a massive cloud of crystalline dust into the desert air. The ground continued to shake, opening fissures in the surrounding landscape. "He's gone," Alara whispered, staring at the ruins. "They're both gone." "Perhaps not," Yulian said suddenly, pointing. Through the settling dust, a figure emerged, Tavik, bloodied but alive, still clutching the crystal protectively against his chest. "The crystal," he gasped as they ran to meet him. "It protected me somehow, created a shield when everything fell." Alara took the crystal from him carefully, noting that it still pulsed with steady blue light. Within its depths, Marcus's face was still visible, now more defined than before. "He's still with us," she said softly. "We need to get him home." The journey back to their ship was arduous but ultimately successful. They found their transport vehicle undamaged and made good time across the desert, arriving at the crash site just as night fell once more. Mira had made progress on the communications array and greeted them with relief. "I was about to send out an emergency beacon," she admitted. "What happened? Did you find what you were looking for?" Alara indicated the crystal, now secured in a makeshift containment field that Eric's had constructed. "We did, but at great cost. Over the next 2 days, they worked to establish communication with Aruvian." The crystal continued its mysterious process, gradually growing brighter and more defined in its internal patterns. Marcus's face appeared frequently, sometimes seeming to watch them, other times appearing deep in some unseen struggle. "The consciousness is stabilizing," Eric's explained, after conducting several tests with the limited equipment available. "But it needs a physical form to fully manifest." "What kind of physical form?" Alara asked. "Ideally, something genetically compatible with the original," Eric's said thoughtfully. "But in the absence of that, we might be able to construct a synthetic body using Aruvian biotechnology, integrated with human DNA patterns from the medallion." "Is such a thing possible?" Yulian asked skeptically. "Theoretically," Eric's confirmed. "Our medical facilities have created replacement limbs and organs for decades. A complete form would be more complex, but with the crystal providing the consciousness template, we'll find a way," Alara decided, watching the pulsing light that contained what remained of Marcus. "Whatever it takes." On the 10th day after their crash landing, a patrol ship from Aruvian located them. By then, news of the princess's unauthorized expedition had reached the sovereign, and the rescue team included royal guards with orders to escort Alara directly back to the palace. "Your father demands an explanation, Your Highness," the lead guard informed her stiffly. "And he specifically ordered that any artifacts recovered from Virun be confiscated for examination." Alara exchanged glances with her companions. They had anticipated this reaction but hoped for more time. "The artifact is delicate and potentially dangerous if mishandled," she explained, choosing her words carefully. "Professor Eric's must maintain direct supervision during transport." The guard hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Very well, but you will all report directly to the sovereign upon arrival. The return to Aruvian was tense. Alara spent most of the journey meditating beside the crystal, which had grown noticeably brighter during transit. Within its depths, Marcus's face had become almost solid in appearance, his features perfectly detailed. Once, when no one else was present, Alara could have sworn she heard his voice, faint but unmistakable, calling her name. "I'm here," she whispered to the crystal. "We're almost home. Just hold on a little longer." Upon reaching Aruvian's orbital docking station, Alara's group was immediately separated. The crystal, still under Eric's supervision but heavily guarded, was taken to the Royal Science Division. Priest Julian was escorted to the Temple of Eternal Light to report to his superiors. Tavik and his remaining team were detained for questioning. Alara herself was brought directly to her father's private audience chamber, where the sovereign waited with an expression that combined relief, anger, and profound disappointment. "Do you understand what you've done?" he asked without preamble when they were alone. "The laws you've broken? The danger you've placed yourself in? For what? A human guard who fulfilled his purpose?" "Marcus was more than his purpose," Alara replied, echoing her words from days earlier. "And yes, Father, I understand exactly what I've done. I've recovered technology that could change everything we know about life and death." "Technology forbidden for good reason," the sovereign countered. "Did Priest Julian not explain the ancient warnings? The cost of disrupting the natural order?" "He did," Alara acknowledged. "But we found a way around that cost. The crystal contains Marcus's consciousness, preserved and amplified. We don't need to sacrifice a life to restore his, only to create a suitable vessel." The sovereign's expression shifted from anger to concern. "You speak of creating artificial life, housing a human consciousness in a manufactured form? The ethical implications alone are complex," Alara finished. "I know, but no more complex than allowing a person to remain dead when we have the means to save them." Her father studied her for a long moment. "You care deeply for this human," he observed, "more than duty requires." Alara met his gaze steadily. "I do. And if I ordered the crystal destroyed, the research abandoned?" "Then you would lose me as surely as I lost him," she answered quietly. "I would never forgive such an act, Father. Never." The weight of her words hung in the air between them. The sovereign turned away, looking out over the crystal city, through the chamber's panoramic windows. "You are my heir," he said finally. "The future of our people. I cannot allow you to throw away that future for a human who may not even be the same person if restored." "I'm not throwing away anything," Alara countered. "I'm building a future where we don't have to accept loss as inevitable, where loyalty and sacrifice are rewarded with more than ceremonial flames and pretty words." Her father sighed deeply. "You have always been stubborn, daughter, like your mother." He turned back to face her. 3 days. Professor Eriks has 3 days to demonstrate that this process can succeed without ethical compromise. If he cannot, the crystal will be placed in permanent stasis and sealed in the royal vault. It wasn't everything she had hoped for, but it was a chance. "Thank you, Father." "Don't thank me yet," he warned. "I'm not convinced this path leads anywhere but to greater pain, for all of us." The next 3 days passed in a blur of frantic activity. Professor Eriks, working with a carefully selected team of royal scientists, constructed a hybrid body using advanced Aruvian biotechnology, combined with human DNA patterns extracted from Marcus's medallion. The body was physically similar to Marcus's original form, but enhanced with Aruvian cellular structures that would allow for greater strength and longevity. The neural pathways were specifically designed to interface with the crystal's unique energy signature. Alara divided her time between overseeing the project and fulfilling her royal duties, which had accumulated during her absence. She also made time to visit the Temple of Eternal Light, where Priest Julian had surprised everyone by advocating for the continuation of their work. The experience has adjusted my perspective, he explained when Alara expressed her gratitude. I still believe in cosmic balance, but perhaps the ancients intended for us to understand that balance, rather than simply fear disrupting it. On the third day, everything was ready. The synthetic body lay on a platform in the Royal Medical Facility's secure chamber, connected to life support systems that maintained its basic functions. The crystal, now pulsing with intense blue light, was positioned above the body's chest, suspended in a field of precisely calibrated energy. Alara, the Sovereign, Erix, Julian, and a small team of specialists gathered to witness the attempted transfer. The atmosphere was tense with both hope and apprehension. The process is theoretically straightforward, Erix explained to the assembled group. The crystal will transfer the consciousness pattern into the neural matrix of the synthetic body. If successful, the body should begin functioning independently within minutes. And if unsuccessful? The Sovereign asked pointedly. Erix's patterns shifted uncomfortably. Then the consciousness may dissipate, lost permanently, or the body may function but without the original personality intact. A fate potentially worse than death, Julian observed solemnly. Alara approached the crystal, placing her hand near it without quite touching its surface. Within, Marcus's face watched her, his expression somehow both peaceful and determined. "It's his choice," she said softly. "It has been from the beginning." At her nod, Erix initiated the transfer sequence. The crystal's pulsing light intensified until it was almost painful to watch directly. Streams of blue energy flowed from the crystal into the synthetic body, following the carefully designed neural pathways. For several long minutes, nothing else happened. The body remained still, showing no signs of independent function beyond the artificial life support. The crystal gradually dimmed, its internal light fading until the face within was no longer visible. "It's not working," one of the specialists murmured. "Give it time," Erix insisted, though concern was evident in his voice. Alara moved closer to the platform, taking the now dormant crystal in her hands. It felt cool to the touch, its surface ordinary and inert. Had they failed? Was Marcus truly gone now, his last echo extinguished by their attempt to save him? "Marcus," she whispered, placing the crystal gently on the synthetic body's chest. "Please." For another moment, nothing changed. Then, almost imperceptibly at first, the body's chest began to rise and fall in a natural breathing pattern. The monitoring systems recorded a heartbeat, weak but steady and gradually strengthening. "Life signs stabilizing," a specialist announced, voice rising with excitement. "Neural activity increasing across all regions." The synthetic eyelids fluttered, then opened slowly, revealing eyes the exact shade of deep brown that Alara remembered. They moved unfocused at first, then gradually settled on her face. "Alara!" The voice was hoarse but unmistakably Marcus's. "Yes," she whispered, tears flowing freely now. "I'm here." His brow furrowed slightly in confusion. "I died." "You did," she confirmed, "but we brought you back." Marcus tried to sit up but fell back, his new body not yet fully coordinated. "How?" "That's a long story," Alara said, carefully helping him to a sitting position. "One I'll tell you when you're stronger." The Sovereign stepped forward, his expression a complex mixture of amazement and concern. "Captain Hale, do you remember who you are, your duties, your past life?" Marcus looked at the Sovereign, then back to Alara. "I remember most things. There are gaps, shadows where memories should be." His hand moved to his chest, feeling the unfamiliar texture of his new skin. "This body isn't mine." "It is now," Erix explained gently. A hybrid form, part human, part Aruvian technology. Your consciousness is the same, but your physical vessel is upgraded, you might say. Marcus absorbed this information with remarkable calm. I remember the assassination attempt. Pushing you out of the way, he said to Alara. After that, fragments, darkness, then a blue light, calling me back. You saved me, Alara said simply. So I saved you? At what cost? Marcus asked, surprisingly perceptive even in his newly awakened state. The room fell silent, everyone looking to Alara for a response. No cost too great, she answered finally, and that was my choice to make. In the days that followed, Marcus's recovery progressed rapidly. His new body, though initially unfamiliar, proved to be remarkably adaptive. Within a week, he was walking unassisted. Within 2, he had regained most of his former strength and coordination. His memories continued to return, though some remained permanently lost, particularly those from his early childhood and parts of his military training before coming to Aruvian. He remembered Alara clearly, however, and their shared experiences over the years of his service as her guard. The Sovereign, after witnessing Marcus's successful restoration and confirming that his loyalty and character remained intact, made a surprising announcement. The resurrection technology would not be destroyed or hidden away as originally planned, but instead would be carefully studied and regulated. Such power cannot be ignored, he declared in a private council meeting, but neither can it be freely available. We will establish protocols for its use, strictly limited to cases where the cosmic balance can be maintained without sacrifice. Priest Julian was appointed to lead a new spiritual advisory council that would work alongside scientific researchers to establish ethical guidelines. Professor Erix was named chief scientist of the project, with a mandate to fully understand the ancient technology while developing safeguards against misuse. As for Marcus, his unique status, neither fully human nor Aruvian, neither truly alive nor resurrected, presented challenges both practical and philosophical. Some in the court whispered that he was an abomination, a violation of natural law. Others viewed him with superstitious awe, as though he might possess special knowledge from beyond death. Alara stood firmly by his side through it all, defending his right to exist and insisting that he remain as her personal guard, despite his altered state. She understood better than anyone the disorientation he felt, having witnessed his journey from death to rebirth. One evening, 2 months after his restoration, they stood together on the palace balcony overlooking the Crystal City. The sunset painted the crystalline structures in shades of gold and crimson, creating a spectacle that even Aruvians, who had seen it countless times, still found breathtaking. Do you regret it? Marcus asked quietly, watching the light play across Alara's features. Bringing me back? She turned to face him, studying the face that was both familiar and new. His features were the same, but the subtle bioluminescent patterns beneath his skin, necessary for the Aruvian components of his hybrid physiology, gave him an otherworldly appearance in the fading light. Never, she answered without hesitation. Though I regret the pain the transition has caused you. Marcus smiled faintly. Pain is part of being alive. At least, that's what I remember. He looked down at his hands, flexing fingers that could now perform calculations and energy manipulations no human could achieve. Though I'm not sure what I am now, exactly. You're Marcus Hale, Alara said firmly. Whatever vessel contains your consciousness, your essence remains the same. Does it? He wondered. Sometimes I feel different, not just physically, but in how I think, how I perceive the world. He gestured toward the city below. I can see patterns now that were invisible to me before. Energy flows, connections between seemingly unrelated things. The Aruvian components of your physiology, Alara explained. They've enhanced your perceptive abilities, but your core self, your values, Your memories of who you are, those remain unchanged. Marcus nodded slowly. My duty to you remains the same, he agreed. Though perhaps for different reasons now. Alara raised an eyebrow. What reasons? Before, I protected you because it was my assignment, my purpose, he explained. Now, I protect you because I choose to, because without you, I wouldn't exist at all. He paused, struggling with unfamiliar emotional terrain. That creates a bond beyond duty. It does, she acknowledged softly. For both of us. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. What happens now? Marcus finally asked. With the technology, with us? Alara looked toward the horizon, where the last remnants of sunlight still painted the edges of distant crystal formations. We move forward. We learn. We discover what it means to exist in this new reality we've created. Together? There was vulnerability in the question, a human uncertainty that his hybrid form couldn't erase. Alara smiled, reaching out to take his hand. His skin felt warmer than before, vibrant with the energy that now flowed through his reconstructed form. Together, she confirmed, whatever comes next. As twilight deepened into night, they remained on the balcony, a princess and her once human guard, united by sacrifice and resurrection, facing an uncertain future with the one certainty that they would face it, side by side. The journey had changed them both. Alara more willing to challenge tradition for what she believed right. Marcus navigating the complex territory between human and other. Neither could predict what challenges lay ahead as the ancient resurrection technology became part of their world, with all its promise and peril. But in that moment, watching the stars emerge above Aruvian's crystal spires, the future seemed full of possibility rather than threat. Life, death, and whatever lay between or beyond, they would face it together, whatever the cost.